Hey, you had a hey to hoodoo. Brakken's technological issues have resumed, and so we got a whole episode for you guys. In the last 10 seconds of it, Brakken just his audio goes away. So here's the intro, because we actually do the intro at the outro of the outro of the after the episode. Something. Anyways, guys, we recap a lot of really cool stuff about Spartan Worlds today, and all the drama with Woods and Killian and Aaron Newell. Talking about Nicole Miracle, Alex Walker's fantastic 5th place to Spartan Worlds, all kinds of really cool, fascinating stuff. Old Man Cracker sits down and gives his take on things. And I apparently go on another 3-minute spiel about CBD. You know what? I like CBD. All right. Anyways, speaking of CBD, Artistic Organic sponsors this podcast. They are the prime recovery tool and recreational tool for many people around the world. Go to artisticorganics.com, use discount code OBDOM for 15% off. Let's do this. And we're not diving in because Brakken's not here to say that stupid thing.
Welcome to the ObstacleDominator.com podcast featuring Benny Gifford and Brakken Crocker. Whether you want to dominate your next obstacle race or just get started in obstacle racing, you're about to discover every tactic you need to know, from gear to training to nutrition. Get the latest tips from the trenches, get your questions answered, and show up at your next obstacle race ready to dominate. And now, here's Benny and Brakken.
It's so ironic that right when Spartan World Championships happens, arguably the biggest event, Obstacle Dominator's like, we out. So, and you had, before we get away from that, actually, I've had so many people reach out and ask me, because you're Mr. Cloak and Dagger on Instagram. Everyone's like, what happened to Brakken? What's going on? And you and I haven't even really talked because I've been so busy and you've been so busy. So I just know medical DNF. Was it the cold? What was it?
Yeah, it was cold, I guess, cold and wet. You want the recap? Should we jump into a recap here?
Well, yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I set a heart rate limit, a hard limit. In training, I kept it 142 to 145 on all of my. That was my upper ceiling for how I wanted to stay fully aerobic.
And just so anybody who doesn't know, he's talking about the Ultra Beast of the Spartan World Championships that he was doing. So yeah,
so at the Spartan Ultra, but there's a handful of good guys in the field, and right away from the beginning, Chris Brown just blew it open. He's the best climber in the field. Day 2, after running the Ultra and winning by 29 minutes or whatever it was, he was in 5th place at the top of the mountain against the world championship field. So it just shows how incredible this man is. Anyways, he blew it open. The rest of us all just ran for second. And I had prepared for 142 to 145, keep my heart rate as close to that zone as possible and never exceed 145. That was a place based on the 50K I ran and some long training runs that I can keep that heart rate for, in theory, 6 hours and still have a gear to use if I need it at the end of lap 2 or halfway through lap 2 or whenever to kind of close down the race. So I just stuck to that. And no matter what that did with me, I just stuck in that zone. Now, actually, when I got out to altitude, and I've noticed this before, I'm 8 to 10 beats higher at altitude than I am when I'm not at altitude. So I just adjusted it to 150 to 155.
For same rate of perceived effort or same pace?
Yep. Rate of perceived effort.
Okay.
Right around 8 to 10 beats. Talking with Kirk and a couple other guys, they're right around that as well. So I was confident, and I knew I might have to adjust that heart rate plan. So I did that and just stuck to it. And that I ran in 2nd place for a half hour or so, and then just shuttled between 2nd and 4th most of that first lap until the last 40 minutes of that lap. I hit a pretty low spot. My legs were just done. This was about 3 hours at that point, and my legs were feeling shot on this 1,500-foot climb we had. And then down the backside, I wasn't able to open up. A, my legs were a little shot, and B, I was a little fearful that if I opened up on the descent, I wouldn't be able to do much in the second half. So I'd saved my higher heart rate and my descending for lap 2. I wanted to be moving in the second half. So got to transition in 5th place and 3 minutes behind Glenn, who was in 3rd. And then dropped my heart rate monitor off, had a quick transition, and got to work. And that was like the biggest win of my day, because that was like the 3rd time I wanted to be done. I was so tired of being out there. It's just a long day. And what I found was difficult, and I thought this would be, was that when you're working at a sub-maximal effort, trying not to work too hard, it sucks way worse to me than working at a maximal effort, because your mind expects your body to feel good at that kind of effort. But running for 5.5 miles up a mountain at altitude just doesn't feel good no matter what effort you use, especially if you're not from altitude. So like going in with a sub-maximal effort, but not being like not feeling good doing that was really difficult. So I was just ready to be done, and I got out of transition, and that was like the biggest win for me. I was very happy. Moved up, caught 4th place, and at the top of the mountain closed out. I was about 15 seconds behind Glenn. So I'd cut 2 minutes and 45 seconds off on that climb, and he failed the rig, got through the rig. And I was like, all right, this is that time. Like, we probably have maybe 2 hours left of racing. It's all limits are off. Let's start getting to work. And so I started pushing more of that red line and just fell off ape hanger. I watched, as I was coming to Tyrolean Traverse, 2nd place got on ape hanger, and I watched him fail it. So Tyrolean was right before ape hanger. So I was, I don't know, within 30 seconds to a minute of second at that point. And I thought, all right, this is it. I'm moving to 2nd. I'm accelerating. I have my downhills ahead of me. And as I reached from the rope to ape hanger, my glove I'd been using just ripped. The strap ripped right off in my hand, just fell right off the ape hanger. And I went down a little bit backwards, and I got soaked. Lap 1 had taken everything off as we got to the top of the mountain, stowed it in my dry bag. And as soon as we got through all the water, threw it back on, had warmed up within 300 or 400 meters and was good. This time I had nothing left. And day 1, there were 40+ mile per hour gusts on top of the mountain. It was a little warmer than day 2 and a little gustier than day 2. So I don't know what's worse. They had worse conditions with the snow and slush on the ground. But suddenly I was soaked. Everything I had was soaked, and I didn't have anything else to put on. And we went into the penalty loop for the barbed wire crawl. And the penalty loop for ape hanger was a barbed wire crawl. They didn't have burpees there, which this ended my day. So the open waves of the beast were going at this point, and no one was making ape hanger. And so they were all in there. It was like move 3 or 4 feet and wait. And I got so cold. I started shaking and shivering, and then I started cramping towards the end of it. I hadn't had any cramping or even signs of cramping yet. Got out of that finally. And the next obstacle, the real obstacle on course, was barbed wire crawl.
Oh,
Back into it with everyone doing it again, and it's slow, and I started cramping worse and shaking worse, and my jaw was quivering, and it felt like my abdominals and my diaphragm started cramping too, and I started coughing really hard. As I got out of this, got over the slip wall, cramping like crazy, and tried to run down the next hill. It's like my core and abdominals were cramping, like squeezing on me, and I had to cough, but I couldn't stop coughing.
Is that barbed wire crawl where that miserable picture you posted is?
Yep. Yep. That was the end of the second one.
You look absolutely miserable.
I was trying not to have my stomach spasm. It was just going really bad. Anyways, long story short, what happened is that I'd cough until I'd burp. Like, you ever have a bad burp and you puke in your mouth here a little bit? And you're like, oh, that almost came up. Well, that's what it was, but it didn't stop there. I'd cough. I couldn't stop coughing. And then I'd burp, and then I'd retch.
Oh.
And I couldn't stop it. But I never felt sick. It was like someone was squeezing a toothpaste tube, and I just couldn't stop it coming up. And so I was just trotting downhill, cramping and vomiting water and gel. Ugh. And just shaking. I couldn't work hard enough to get warm. And I just started looking for a place to get warm, and finally found down by the swim. I just ran past the double sandbag to get inside the building to just warm up. And I knew, if I can just get warm, I could probably finish the course, because nothing's injured. I don't think I'm cramping because of anything that's failing. I'm just so pre-hypothermic here. But the second you go in there, you can't finish the course.
Yeah.
You know, I'd already gone off course to get inside the building, and then I took one of those Mylar blankets, and at that point they cut your band off, and I took a truck down the mountain. Yeah. And a half hour later, I was sitting in the hot tub. I was eating food with no stomach issues. And the next day I ran 9.5 miles with 2,000 feet of vert following the beast course. So like my body was okay, but it was not okay to move in that moment. So I got beat by the cold and wet.
Man. And by some crazy weird stomach issues too.
I don't think it was stomach issues. I think it was just my body was just in such shutdown mode. Like the coffee, I couldn't stop coughing.
Whether it was sick or not, the point is your body was rejecting fuel, and it's like you can't have that in an ultra. There's no way.
So I don't know. Could I have warmed up in there for a long time and then continued on and walked my way down and and finished? Yeah, but I wasn't there for that.
Yeah. No,
Once my timing chip was gone, that was it. I was there to race. So yeah, it was a really frustrating finish. As a competitor, I was really, really frustrated with the finish. But as the person who went out there to find out a bit, I was as satisfied as I can be with a DNF. Like it eats at me that I DNF'd, and I'm going to have to do another one, to get that out of my system. But I got through so many low points on lap 1 and lap 2. And to be moving up through the field again on lap 2 and feeling strong, and the stuff I was doing in training paying off, that was a big win. I could have walked off that course 3 or 4 times lap 1, especially at transition. The transition area is mean. It's just everything you could ever want in that moment is right there. You just have to not leave. So I was happy I left transition and got on it. It was, to be honest, it was a relief to start hurting, because it was just like a dull ache until that point, which was like death by water droplets, Right. But as soon as it started to really burn lap 2, it felt better to feel like, okay, I'm racing now.
Yeah.
So that's that. Just the long story.
Well, you and I are 2 peas in a pod with, I don't know if that was your first DNF, but
I have 3 and they're all at championship races.
Well,
a Spartan in Vermont, a Spartan in Tahoe, and an OCR Worlds.
Was it the one in Ohio?
Yeah, the second year?
Yeah.
First year in Ohio? One of the first or second year in Ohio.
That year, dude,
that was a mental weakness day. I could have finished. I walked out in like a pissy cloud of depression. Like I was just mad. I had lost a podium spot. I was in 5th, 50 meters from the finish line. I walked off the course because I couldn't get tip of the spear. I was like, I'm not waiting around for a half hour to get my grip back. This is stupid. And I gave up my band and walked off. Like I could have finished that day. That was an embarrassing DNF. This was what can I do?
You know what though? Embarrassment is just is in the face of what you think other people think. It's not shame. You don't care about finishing. The only reason you're like,
I was shamed that I could have finished and chose not to. I was just being a little baby about it.
I don't know, man. I'm not completely sold, or I just haven't had the lesson in life that has, in a positive way, taught me that there is sheer value in just finishing things, even after you've identified that they're not it's not that the only factor is that you don't want to be doing it anymore. But like if you went in there with the goal of a podium, it's like when you're a professional athlete, you're not going for the same reason that some of the open classes are, where it's like, just finish, get that finisher medal. It's like, that's not my goal. I don't give a crap about that. And so it's like, once that goal is gone, it's like, well, what's the point of doing this anymore? So for me, I'd be like, I don't care. Yeah, I'm not doing this. My goal is gone. So for me, there's no value left in continuing.
I can see that. And I think for like the very tip of the spear of the athletic spectrum, I think that's a valid excuse. But like I was there as kind of like, I don't know, I was there to race. I was there with my family. I was there with athletes I was coaching. Like there's more than one hat I was wearing there, and I didn't represent most of those hats very well. And that was a very embarrassing moment. And I got called out for it online and deservedly so. But it was one of those where I decided like, never again will I like walk off a course. I will medical off a course, which I've done twice now. I've cramped off a course twice, but I'll never again leave a course out of frustration.
I've up until this weekend, I've never had the experience or the opportunity myself to know what decision I would actually make in the moment. But I did Savage Race. I was able to find a time during my.
You raced already?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
What do you mean?
Well, because like we were talking originally 6 to 8 weeks of no contact, and now you're out racing 3 or 4 weeks later. That's crazy.
I'm talking about my teeth, man. I'm back at full training. Like this implant is good. It's solid. Everything's fine.
That's awesome.
I mean,
and you're clean shaven. Look at you.
Yeah. I shot a video there's this company that is
Vivid.
hosting. Huh?
Vivid.
What is Vivid?
I'm just kidding. That's a adult film.
Oh, nope. I didn't even know what that was.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what Vivid is. And they are hiring a host to basically be an escort minus the sexual part for some really high-end clients that are coming into town. They're going to the Imagine. Well, I guess I'm not supposed to say any of this. Whatever. They're going to 2 really big concerts.
What band is the second half of Imagine? Could be anything.
A bunch of people are shouting Dragons right now.
Could be anything. Who knows? Maybe it's not Imagine Dragons.
Maybe, yeah. And a couple other things. And they basically want someone to be by the client side and show them a good time for 3 days in a row. And it pays quite a bit of money. And so they wanted me to shoot. It was only for women, but I didn't realize that in the post. And so I responded. And they said, hey, actually, we really like you. Can you submit anyways? You just don't have to do the little catwalk part of the video because they wanted women to like dress.
You're a nice smooth transition from woman to man for anyone who's questioning that's coming in from out of town. I think that's a smart choice.
Right. So surgery's next week. No, and so I said, I don't care. I'll still do the catwalk thing. So I set up a video and I had a bunch of scruff and I made it, I shaved it to where it was like the nice 5 o'clock shadow look. And I put on my full-on John Barbados $2,000 outfit that I've got. And I did my little catwalk, my little turn on the catwalk. And I went up to the camera and I was like, hey, my name's Benjamin, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, you could pick from a couple different looks. We can do the kind of rugged 5 o'clock shadow look, and then I snap. And then I had shaved and was like, or we can do the refined clean cut look or whatever. And then I snap my fingers and I go back to having facial hair. And it's little things like that other people don't do with their videos that gets me selected. Even if
I find time travel kind of alienates an audience.
What?
Time travel can sometimes alienate an audience. It's a confusing storyline.
But if it's done correctly, it's so smooth that they just enjoy it and they're captured by the magic of the moment. They don't question it.
I think that's fair.
But oh shit, I kicked over my Zevia that is not open yet. Anyways, and that's why I'm shaved. I don't actually like being shaved like this. But anyway, so Savage Race was last weekend, and I worked 120 hours at the State Fair for Jeep in the past 12 days. And I was able to find time in the morning before my shift to go race Savage. And I was super pumped about it. And I was honestly a little nervous because I've been kind of pushing to the back of my mind the fact that I was pretty sure I had a stress fracture in my right foot. And because my foot was just growing and growing and growing in pain. And, online was all saying, yep, you're going to die. It's a stress fracture. And but I don't have insurance, so I didn't go get a x-ray or anything. And I was kind of putting it to the back of my mind because I was scared about all the emotional stuff that would come with that if I had to deal with it. But I ended up DNFing, and it had nothing to do with my foot. And it was my first DNF ever. I was so excited to race Savage because it's my favorite race series in America. The obstacles are so fun, and they're actually hard. And I'm in position exactly like I want to be. I've studied the course map. I'm feeling good.
Who all showed up?
We've got Victor Quesada. Apparently, this guy, Cash Takavalli, is actually pretty damn good. He's been saying for the past year, or rather his coach, Cody Thrift, has been saying, watch out, Benny, he's coming for you. And then, it's not that I blow him out of the water, but, he's hasn't been somebody I've had to contend with. And then we take it out, and Cash was telling me beforehand that he's going to try and burn Victor down from the beginning, because Victor has this thing where if you can break Victor, he kind of falls apart. But I was telling Cash, I was like, I don't know if that's a good idea, man, because Victor always starts way too hard and ends up slowing down later. So you're going to burn you both. In my head, I'm like, all right, that's great. Just kill each other in the beginning. And
Vic's strong this year, though.
Huh?
Vic's strong this year.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Vic is so weird, man. He has massive shifts in fitness. It's crazy. But Who else was there? David Watson, who was Hunter Russell's friend. They ran track, I think, together in school. Hunter, I think they both were running like sub 9 2-minute miles. Sub 9 2 miles. I said that weird. But anyway, so he beat me at the last Savage race because he's such a fast runner. I just could not keep up with him, even with the massive amount I was gaining on obstacles. But here, he started coming up next to me, and the way I expected the race to go was he'd pull ahead of me on the runs, and I'd reel him back in, and then we'd do this thing on the obstacles. And about a mile in, I was like, you know what? I'm a much faster runner than I was last time I raced him. I'm going to hold on and not let him pass me and see how it feels. And I did it, and I was like, I can do this. I totally got this. And so from that point, I was just like, nope, I'm not giving up time and then just making it all. Because I would, once that guy gets his obstacle game together, he's going to be a real competitor. But I mean, it was unreal how much time I would gain on him in the obstacles, which shows how much better he can get. But I was like, okay, I can hang with this guy running and blow him out on obstacles. So I started pulling away from him. I was sitting in fourth, and I was actually exactly where I wanted to be because I knew Victor and Cash were going to start falling apart at this point. And where I was going to drop the hammer was right at the last mile where they started putting a bunch of obstacles together. And I'm reeling third back in, and I can see Cash and Victor, and they both look like they're kind of starting to like run with slumped shoulders and stuff out of the obstacles. They're not pepping their step the second they get out of obstacles anymore. And so I'm like, sweet, this is where it happens. And so I'm going up the A-frame, and everyone knows the fastest way to get down the A-frame cargonet is you do 2 front flips, and then you bound off at the bottom. Well, I was used to Spartan races, super tall one, where with my length, if I do 2 dive rolls, I can be at the bottom like that. Well, Savage is smaller, and I just didn't pay attention and did 2 big flips. And like when I'm flipping, I dive out. I don't just like casually roll. I'm like throwing my body weight. And I massively overshot the second part. And instead of landing on cargo net, my calves slammed extremely hard down onto the steel crossbar at the bottom.
Oh.
And I thought, ooh, ow, that really hurt. But, I'm thinking, yes, whatever. And so I come off the net to start running, and my legs are like little Bambi legs, and I couldn't. And I was like, oh my God, this hurts really bad. And so I thought maybe if I keep running, they'll loosen up a little bit and I'll be able to keep moving. And I made it about 30 yards more of stumbling around before I finally just kind of fell over and could not get my calves to stop contracting.
Yeah.
And it wasn't cramping. It was just like crazy. I had just damaged so many blood vessels across my entire calves that I couldn't stand up anymore.
So I've seen that the calf kick now is becoming it's the newest move in MMA that everyone's using.
Right.
And they all say you can take 3 or 4 solid calf kicks, and then your leg just gives out on you, and you don't have a say in the matter. Oh. And it's crazy. It's exactly what you described. It's like Bambi legs. People start rolling their ankles, and their leg flops, and they can't control their leg. So you just did that in one blow on the A-frame.
Yeah, I didn't. I thought you were making a joke about using
seriously
as an instrument to strike people, but okay, no, that's
no, getting kicked in the calf, it's a game ender.
Yeah, apparently, and so it was funny because I guess for my first DNF, I'm pretty happy because it's I didn't get an injury. I mean, I haven't been able to run until today, and I can only run for about 5 minutes before my calves are like, hey, all right, that's enough. But compared to what people usually DNF for, the after effect has been minimal. But
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Everyone was real nice as they were running by. David was even like, dude, what's the matter? And I was like, oh, go. And every single person. So it was cool. It was nice. Good race to have that happen at. I just missed out on some money. It wasn't a part of a series or anything. So, yeah.
Well, should we chat some other people in this industry? Should we talk about Tahoe? Recap that a little bit?
Yes, we should. We're going to talk about all the drama between...
Yeah. Now, before we get to the drama, I do want to say that I had probably the coolest seat on course because I was able to run all over the mountain, and I saw almost every important part of that race. It was probably my favorite race I've ever been a part of as a spectator. I guess I don't have a ton of spectating memories, but I've spectated at Tahoe 2 or 3 times now, twice, and a couple other big races, and it was so cool to watch. The athletes out there that won and took top 10, they were just in a different place than the other people during that race. And it's not a knock on anyone who did poorly out there, but watching these people just make the decision that they were biting down no matter what happened was awesome to watch. Aaron Newell strikes me coming up out of the double sandbag carry. He looked like a little kid who had lost his parents. Like his face was just like contorted in like this, it was like half panic and like half misery, but he dropped it and just like exhaled and got to work again. And you could see coming up it, he was like at the end of his like tolerance of this race. And then he just kept attacking and he kept attacking. He got to the bottom of the mountain. And I'm sure you saw, like everyone did, the Instagram video of him doing monkey in the middle, where he's lashing and doing all these like hand release grabs. And that was him. And 20 minutes prior to that, he was like in a death zone, but he just refused to let go. Like he had his teeth in the fight and he wasn't going to let go. Kirk was in the full on, like he was on the pain train at the top of the mountain. He was so wrecked by that race, starting the double sandbag. He and Kent started it at the same time. And they both, they had actually kind of bad volunteering on course. That's something we can talk about later, but it was a very disappointing officiated race from Spartans on Spartan's end. I think part of this probably they had a lot of volunteers back out because the conditions were so terrible. But at the end of the day, it's a world championship race. You have to come up with workers somehow. But there was no one like yelling at them. These people were a mess coming down the mountain. They just done ape hanger where they had to get wet on the dismount, and then they had to do the barbed wire crawl, which was slush by the time they got there. It was like 18 degrees at the top of the mountain with 20-mile-per-hour gusts. So they get to this point, they're already a mess. They're freezing, and they have to get a double sandbag up on their shoulder, the black floppy bags. They had to do 2 of those rather than a pancake in that or anything else. And they were frozen. They had gotten wet from the snow and the rain, and then they had frozen. And so they were just really unwieldy. So people were miserable there, and no one directed them how to go. So they took it and they started down the inside of the carry, and you had to go on the outside. So they went like probably only 25 feet the wrong way. That's an extra 50-foot carry with a double sandbag.
Yeah.
And so anyways, Kirk came out of that and Kent came out of that just hurting, and Kirk was in so much pain, and he just stayed on it the whole rest of the race, just slowly crumbling, but refusing to crumble. And watching Killian, Atkins was like an inspiration to watch. He's a guy that I had like this hate-love relationship with. Not love-hate, it was hate-love. When he first came onto the scene, I despised the guy. He was like this Canadian, he was the tough mudder guy. He was like kind of trash-talking Spartan race, or at least I took it that way, and he was also really good. And I mistook his quiet confidence for arrogance. I just didn't like him. And I knew nothing about him personally. I was just offended by his presence in my sport. You know, like I didn't want him there. And then I made it like my mission to beat him. And over the course, like the next 2 years, every race, I just go out on his shoulder and just try to beat him. In some races, there was a battle frog. I'd surge past him anytime he slowed for anything, or to grab a drink of water or to take a gel. And over the course of 2 years of doing this, I just came to like really respect the guy because A, I couldn't beat him, and B, he never did anything wrong, ever. We'd be out on switchbacks where no one's around and he wouldn't cut them. We get to obstacles where you could like kind of like move around the side. He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't say a bad word about anyone. Like he just wouldn't do anything wrong. And I finally had to admit like, all right, A, I was wrong about him. B, he's a pretty awesome person. And then C, he's an animal. He's a freak of nature. I just didn't want to give him that credit early on, but he just earned it from me. And he probably didn't even know he had to. He's just being himself, which is kind of the coolest part about him. But he came into this destroyed from Eco Challenge and not prepped for a world race. And just what he did out there was incredible. So it's a long rant, but just the people who did well out there are on just such another plane of mental toughness than what most people ever see in their life. It was really cool to watch.
Yeah, you know, I guess it comes down to that's my reason for not wanting to participate and never having participated in the Spartan World Championships is I'm not interested in just freezing my ass off for 2 hours. Like I'm not I was thinking about it this morning on my little 5-minute run. It wasn't really a run. I mean, I was done working. I had a different event for the fair this morning, setting up for Fox Sports, and it was raining and freezing and really hard wind, and I'm soaked to the bone. And so I'm running back to my car, and it's about a mile back across the fair. And I can't feel anything. You know, I'm just running on stumps. Like, you don't get the feel that you have during normal weather. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't like physical activity when I cannot access half of my faculties, when everything is just numb and I'm just running on stumps. And I realized that that's you could bring that down to mental toughness. Like Spartan World Championships is even above OCR Worlds, you know, the biggest thing to win in our sport. And if that's important to me, this athletic career, then cold is not something that should stop me. And that's something that they've all nailed down is, this is just something that you got to deal with.
You know, your description of that, of not wanting to be out there cold and wet, that was what people's faces looked like coming down the mountain. There were, I would say, 2/3 of the elite field. I watched probably through the top 20 at each obstacle for the first half of the race, and then top 10 for the second half. For that first half of the race, the top 20 coming through, I'd say about 1/3 of them wanted to be there anymore.
Albin.
The other 2/3 did not want to be on that mountain anymore. And you could tell, and they stopped attacking. They stopped using things to their advantage. And that's, again, it's not like this is not me calling them out. It's just the reality that it took a unique person to want to be out there any longer than they already were, because 2/3 of the best athletes in our sport in the world they had mentally checked out. They did not want to be out there doing it anymore. Yeah. And as a result, they couldn't. It was great. It's funny you say John Albin, because John Albin had that look on the double sandbag carry. I won't say he didn't want to be out there, but he was miserable. He failed his spear throw when he was tied with Killian for second place. So he made it to the top of the mountain through the bucket with Killian, and he failed his spear throw.
Yeah.
Right next to Killian. And so he had to do his burpees in the slush puddle. And then he had to roll through the crawl, and he got to the double sandbag. And right from the start, I even yelled to him. I yelled, like, you have to readjust those, adjust your sandbags. And he either couldn't hear me or couldn't do it.
That was, watching that, I was like, what is happening right now? How this just seemed like such a newbie mistake. I was like, what are you doing?
He couldn't get them right. And he wanted to keep moving, and then suddenly by the time it was time to start adjusting, it was too late. His hands were frozen. He couldn't get them back up where he needed to be, and he was farmers carrying them up the hill. He must have put them down 6 to 8 times on the way up the mountain.
I just don't understand why, when he's so flawless, he's like Atkins in his execution of things, why he would not know to do the cross thing that everyone else was doing.
Well, because he's never seen the 2 black bags before in a carry. He's always done one with 2 of the tightly bound one, or a pancake and a black one. And honestly, when you got to that point, they were so unwieldy that some people just couldn't get them. If you didn't get them settled the first time, you were in for a struggle. And I don't think he took it seriously, how bad it was going to be if he didn't set it right the first time.
I don't understand how it's possible when that has historically been the point where people have gained on him, like Moat and Atkins. If they've ever been ahead of him, it's been because of, the carries right there, the double sandbag carry.
Yeah. But the last 2 times in Tahoe, he didn't struggle with the double sandbag very much. But they were different bags. Anyways, regardless of how it happened, he lost a minute to Atkins on that carry. Wow. And so people were talking about, if he doesn't miss his spear, he wins worlds. And that's true. But I thought he was going to take like 10th in the race. He came off of that sandbag so compromised. Like, his face looked like I haven't seen it before. I hadn't seen it before. We don't see him miserable very often because he's so much better than people, but he was full on hurting, and he left it not running as fast as other people left it running. And suddenly at the bottom, he's in 3rd place. It was crazy.
I can only picture 2 moments where I've ever seen Albin's face look like, oh my God, I think this guy's at his edge. And that's during, I think it's 2015 Spartan Worlds, when he was on that Herc hoist and he knew Atkins and Moat were right there. Yeah. And he had to like rest in the middle of it. And then at the 3K OCR World Championships last year in London, and he even said it at the end, he was like, That sucked. I hated that. Like nobody ever pushes him like that. Which, by the way, congrats again, Mr. Albin, for winning the 3K
Crazy.
again. Which is.
But yeah, so his comeback there was one of like the 3 most impressive takeaways from that weekend, to see him that destroyed and then get back on it and get back to work. He refused to panic and he stayed with it. It was incredible.
This is still something that's a foreign concept to me, how people come back from burpees and then not only come back, but like will excel past their original position, even to make it back to that position. I've just never done that before. Like I've never had to do burpees ever in a race. And so I don't know what that's like. Because to me, 30 burpees is like, well, there's no freaking way now. When you're already fighting to the death to, just be next to somebody, in my mind, it's like, how the hell do you come back from that and get anywhere near where you were? It's just one of those crazy things that makes no sense to me.
It shows how good some of these guys are.
Yeah, but then
all right, enough of the positive stuff.
Yeah, you're right.
All right.
Before we dive into the juicy stuff, I want to take this moment to talk about Artistic Organics, because I think that's important. And I want to highlight a couple different things. Artistic Organics is our CBD sponsor, if anybody's wondering. If you're wondering and you don't know, then I don't know what's wrong with you. I wanted to highlight this because we brought up how animals are affected by CBD, and clinical trials are not. My mother's dog is this little silky terrier, and he had gum disease, and like he had teeth falling out, and like he would be in a room and the entire huge room would smell instantly the way when he came in, because his breath was so bad from the disease. And we took him to get surgery, to pull the teeth out, to take the antibiotics to solve it. Well, it happened twice. They were like, oh yeah, this will solve it. And then it ended up coming back. And so they took more teeth out. They're like, oh yeah, these antibiotics will solve it. Both times the disease came back. And so we said, well, that's stupid. We're not doing that again. So we thought, hey, well, that was right around when I started taking CBD. And so we started giving Sammy the CBD. And within, 7 or 8 days, the smell is completely gone. And I talked to, I forget who. Ew. It's chicken, beef and cheese flavored though, so it doesn't smell very good. And I just got it on my hand. But anyways, so it's solved his gum disease issues. Now he doesn't have to, well, he still eats mushy food because he has no teeth left. But anyways, fantastic for doggos. I gave it to my husky also. And then other thing is, this is not pot, even though it looks like pot. This is, it's called the Visionary Blend. It's got motherwort, nettle leaf, hops, mugwort, damia, and other things that sound like it came out of a witch's cauldron. And you're supposed to like mix it in. You can smoke it just like it is or vape it or whatever, but I mix it in with marijuana. And I've noticed that when you add this to it.
Where are we even going with this? Is this a commercial, or is this Benny's like excellent adventure? What's happening here?
It's both, man. You can do all kinds of amazing stuff with Artistic Organics products. And so it, like those clarity of thoughts you get when you're in the shower, when you're running. I'm looking for some feedback. Yes, no? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know if I'm on board with what's happening right here.
Wait, hold on. Just answer the question. Yeah,
I get some epiphanies when I run. Yes.
All right. Well, freaking derailing me over here.
Derailing? You're on a 3-minute rant in the middle of a podcast about how you mix this in with your marijuana.
I get that kind of clarity and I don't know about epiphanies, but like those clear thoughts where it's like, oh yeah, I should do that. Why am I not doing that? And blah, blah, blah. When I add that to a little bit of marijuana. But anyways, and then there's so many other things. I don't know. CBD. Yay. Go to artisticorganics.com, 15% off with the code ABDAM. And
well, that was our smoothest commercial yet. I think we nailed it.
You know what? I don't think anybody wants to hear a perfectly scripted, shitty actual commercial. So, I mean, I know I would find this more entertaining to hear my favorite host stumbling through some raw pitch of something they actually like, rather than some perfectly tuned commercial. But anyways, I thought that was a good place to put it, right before we get to the juicy stuff. So they have to listen to us talk about CBD.
Alrighty.
Yeah. All right. Well, now let's talk about the juicy stuff. Take it away, Brakken, because apparently I've been talking for 3 minutes.
Well, time flies when you're high.
Not high, for the record. I am about.
Yeah. So like
some seeding
Instagram
stuff.
blew up this week, right?
Yeah.
It was crazy. So it started out, Woods got penalties in Spartan World at the Spartan World Championships. He went from, what did he finish, fifth, fourth, and it bumped him to, was it ninth or 10th?
Ninth.
So ninth. And instantly people were up in arms because how can Spartan do this after the fact? And don't they have their own policy? It has to be done by the time of the podium. And as typical of like internet warriors, everyone was wrong. It happened before the podium, but Spartan decided to release their statistics after the fact to shed some clarity on what was happening. So this is going to start as if I'm a Spartan apologist. And by the end of it, it's going to be me railing against Spartan. So just bear with me here, people. So in their defense, they did kind of like the honorable thing. They showed all the stats on like top 20 or 30 racers, the penalties, what they got it for, and how much time they got and what it did to their placing. And instead of people saying like, wow, that's really cool. And that's really great that they're, video recording everyone and making sure it's good. People lost their freaking minds that A, Spartan did it after the fact, which they didn't. And B, they just went off on these top athletes for being cheaters, like these profane tirades against these athletes for cheating. Not once stopping to think athletes didn't skip 15 burpees to get away with it. They had bad form for 15 burpees.
Right.
Now, there's two sides to this. The first is that it's inexcusable for a top Spartan athlete to do bad burpee form. And that is 100% truth. Now, Aaron Newell went on this giant rant against all the trolls, and he started personally attacking them and calling them out and taking them to task for calling people cheaters, especially Ryan Woods. Ryan got a lot of flack for it, and Aaron stood up for him, which, that's a good best friend move. The downside is you can't win an internet argument. You can't, like, no one ever said, wow, man, that guy trolled me so good, I'm going to repent. You're right, man. Right. Not only am I wrong, but I'm a jerk. I'm going to apologize. I'll never do it again. No, they just delete their account, start a new one, and troll some more. Like that, you don't win internet. So while I respect Aaron Newell's commitment to keeping the other trolls at bay, obviously it's just not an effective tactic. But he was wrong about something. And that was, he said, it's impossible to execute a perfect burpee. He said, no one's capable of doing it. And Spartan's standards are terrible and ill-defined. You can't do it. No one can do it, especially when you're tired. And I don't know about you, Benny, but I would say that is, to use words that I can't stand using, that is categorically false. That's wrong. A burpee is really, really simple. Your chest must touch the ground. You must come upright so that your knees and hips are locked at full extension and your hands must go above your head. Every single person in this world knows how to lie down on their face and how to stand up at attention with their hands above their head. There is nothing difficult about that. When you're tired, is it harder to hit those movement standards? Yeah, it's difficult if you're really tired, but stand up straight, jump off the ground, lift your hands above your head, and lock your legs and hips out. Like that's very, very simple.
I think that comment could be better directed, and maybe, well, I'm not going to say he didn't mean what he said, but I think I could get more behind it if it's talking about the difficulty of officiating.
Well, and he did say that as well, but he reiterated multiple times that it is impossible to execute them to Spartan standards because we don't know what they are, and they're impossible to do when you're tired. And again, I consider everyone in this a friend of mine. Aaron's a friend of mine. Ryan's a friend of mine. Robert Cobal's a friend of mine. So like, these aren't personal statements. This is a blanket statement. Burpees are really easy. And if you screw them up, you're either intentionally screwing them up or you're intentionally not learning them correctly. Like if you can't do a burpee, you can't tell me that you can make it through a multi-rig. Like that is far more complex than a burpee. Yeah. Lay on your stomach, stand upright, jump in the air, and raise both hands. That's pretty simple.
To his point about Spartan not being able to do it to Spartan standards because Spartan standards aren't clear. I've heard Spartans say and give examples of what you just did there about it several times. I can remember Yancey Culp doing it as the Spartan representative at the beginning of stadium races, but this is neither here nor there because I can see a point that Aaron is making in that at the end of the rule book, the judge on site is what matters. And
Yes.
judges are never the same judge. They're never consistent. Half the time they're wrong. So I can see what Aaron's point is there.
Yep. And that's where you are both 100% correct. The time has come for Spartan to stop shooting themselves in the foot with officiating. And I'm tired of hearing that we cannot provide judges for every athlete. We cannot provide perfect judging for this, because that's not an excuse. That is no different than when they used to say, we can't provide tape for every inch of the course. Do you know how much that would cost? Listen, if you cannot provide enough tape, you can't afford to put on an event. If you cannot provide enough judges, you cannot put on the event. And so the only options are A, don't put on the event, B, judge it correctly, or C, remove the facet that requires judging. Those are the only three options. You cannot continue to have volunteers poorly trained, not show up, or just do their job incorrectly. CrossFit does it. How hard is it to say rep, no rep every time? We cannot let penalties happen after the fact anymore. That is foolish.
To play, not even devil's advocate here, this is kind of the chillaxed backseat I'm in, and why I never care or really get fired up when Spartan does something that we perceive as stupid, is because, guys, we're still the flipping 1%, and they have a hierarchy of needs, and officiating is not in their hierarchy of needs right now. Like, we're talking about professional, outside of the professional competition, the judges don't matter. You know, it's going to come down to like the community being like, hey, you didn't tell that guy to do his burpees, you know, whatever. It's like that. It's not about money and stuff like that. And even when it is about money, but even when it is, we're still this tiny little part of Spartan that you could snap your fingers and erase, and Spartan would keep existing without us. Whereas the other way around, not so true. Now, I know that the sport is moving towards, like any competitive sport will, towards the professional competitive side, and maybe turning into a spectator sport, not as much participant. I don't know. But I get why Spartan's like, look, it's not our priority right now. Our priority is, yes, it's refining and stuff, but within this realm of that not actually being our top priority.
Yep.
I don't really have a problem with that.
I would agree with that if Spartan were doing that. Like, I'm not saying we're so important we need professional judges. I'm saying that Spartan says these are professional athletes. This is the world championship. If they're going to make statements like, we are putting out $1 million in prize money, these are professional athletes, we're going to penalize you 10 minutes if you do it incorrectly. If you're going to do things like that invite professional eyes on the sport, then you have to do the things that are associated with that. If you put prize money on and you have a penalty, you now have to provide an official.
True.
All right. So burpees, like, can we just please be done with this count them after the fact? You have to have someone there saying rep or no rep. This can't be a guessing game. Did they or didn't they? It takes away all potential for controversy if they just tell you right now, Ryan Woods, your chest didn't touch the ground, no rep. Chest didn't touch the ground, no rep. That's all it took. And it takes away the bad publicity, and it refines the sport. Now, if they can't do that, then they just have to get rid of burpees. Like that. Yeah. That's it. You can't. How many years is this? This is my 9th, 8th year in the sport. How can we not yet solve the burpee problem? You either have to have an official or no burpees. And that's all there is to this. It doesn't make any sense. Ryan Woods was not cheating, but he made a conscious decision not to put his chest down into the slush puddle that he was burping into. So is that gaining an advantage? It is. And I like Ryan. And I don't say he's cheating, but he was gaining an advantage by not doing full burpees. But he is gambling on the fact, is this right or is this wrong? Because people have not touched their chest to the ground before and not got penalized. Yeah. You know, I know that I've done burpees before where I'm kind of arched up like this and maybe my sternum's touching, but my chest isn't. So he doesn't get to find out until 2 hours after he crosses the finish line if he did it correctly. If the official on his first burpee said no rep, chest has to touch the ground, that eliminates all issues for the rest of that race for Ryan Woods.
You know, the burpee it's so difficult to officiate, man, because even in
it's not.
No, because like, what is my chest? My nipple, the little bit of muscle and skin underneath my nipple, because then that's just basically a roll. Like, it's up to somebody's visual perception of being an inch down from the ground and then standing up on like every burpee to make sure everything hits. Like,
but But the burpee is not that complex of a movement. Is it any more complex than a clean and jerk? Or than handstand push-ups?
No.
Then how does CrossFit not have any issues with hundreds of athletes going through doing way faster reps than what we do? Because they've defined a standard, and the officials do their job because they're paid. Even if it's just meals, they're set up and they have pride in their job and they do it. Spartan doesn't seem to care if the officials care. And so like if you can officiate a clean and jerk, a hang snatch, muscle ups, handstand push-ups, if you can officiate those, you can officiate a burpee that takes place over the course of 2 seconds rather than a split-second clean and jerk.
This is something that Tough Mudder ended up doing directly because I said, hey, you guys need to do this. I said, even if you can't pay people, if you get a slew of shirts that say judge instead of volunteer, people will immediately stand up with their back straighter. They will be more serious. They will feel more power to actually act on things and not be scared of, oh, it's John Albin, I don't want to tell him. And they did that at TMX, and they put a judge on each one of us, and man, were they on it, because of these shirts, like they were probably briefed like 5 minutes before the race on what the hell we were doing. And yet they were on it because they had they stood out. They weren't just like, oh yeah, I'm a volunteer, I'm going to get a race free later.
Yeah. And it's simple. It's that easy to do it. And the counter to that is, if you can't do that, remove the burpee, make it all penalty loops. My form through that barbed wire crawl was terrible, but the punishment was the same, Either do it correctly or don't do it at all, but don't give people like Ryan the chance to get eviscerated online or to get 10 minutes taken off their time or to get away with something. Don't give an athlete the opportunity to make a mockery of your rules.
I think it boils down to what Spartan sees as more of a priority to act on, which is either because like if you were to remove the burpee, which we know is going to happen at some point, but if you were to remove the burpee, I'm trying to think the way Spartan could be thinking as a company is Buck Furpees, it's a whole community around burpees. And so you think, okay, well then the solution to that is don't remove the burpee, just remove it for the professional waves. So we're age division, the competitive waves. And that way they get to keep it. But we've seen this as an ongoing theme with Spartan, with Battle Frog, with everyone, is they hold up the professional athletes as a torch to help burn the fuel of getting more people interested. And so if you remove an aspect from the elite race, it suddenly loses its like valor and awesomeness when the open class does it. Like they're going to be like, whatever, no, it's not connected. So I sound like I've been like defending Spartan, but it's because I've been trying predominantly to just think the way they're thinking rather than the way everyone thinks, which is, it's so easy to just point out stuff from the outside and be like, yeah, no, why aren't they doing this and that and stuff? But I don't know. I think it was this year when I jumped back on board with Spartan that I really realized that the sport doesn't exist without Spartan, and that doesn't give them a free pass to just, do whatever they want. And this kind of refining conversation needs to happen all the time, but it's removed almost any kind of edge that I have to, oh, Spartan, you suck. You need to be doing this and that. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's probably what they need to be doing. So I would love to see burpees gone, and or yes, the judges thing. But we've been talking about calling for judges for years. So it's like just do one or the other at some point.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, so then the Woods Killian thing. So we went right from that to Woods. Ryan's a friend of mine, so I'm doing this from our OCR media standpoint rather than a friend calling out Ryan. So Ryan, don't take offense to this, buddy. I'm just talking black and white here. Ryan has a track record of taking things that he's done wrong, either intentionally or unintentionally, and playing the victim, and then taking it one step farther and attacking the other side. So we saw it with the truss. He made a very dramatic post afterwards about the truss. Do I get that he was gutted about the truss? Yes. Was it his fault? He was victimized in that they gave him a ridiculous 10-minute penalty, but he grabbed the truss. Like everyone knows you can't grab the truss, and it did gain an advantage, probably a total of a second or less. Shouldn't have been 10 minutes, but it was his fault. And he went off and attacked Spartan for it. The failed drug test, made a big show of his, I didn't do anything wrong, then went on and attacked the next podcast host really, really brutally and personally, like out of left field, way above and beyond what was allowed.
I don't know if I can side with you on that, my friend.
Did he attack him personally?
Oh, yeah, but I can't agree with the second half of your statement as far as what was deserved or what was called for. Like,
as a person talking to another person, was what he did appropriate? Now, was the interviewer professional in the way he handled it? No. But to go off on a really mean tirade, especially as the person who was in the wrong coming in, again, that is going above and beyond projecting something else onto someone else. So I'm just laying a track record here. I'm not going to defend Will on this. All right. I will not do that because he was wrong. But Woods' response was like scorched earth.
I thought you were talking about Evan.
Evan, sorry. I mean to say
okay, I was like,
Evan.
crap, I don't know what we're talking about.
So anyways, the response, the way he responded to his controversy was, again, lash out above and beyond. And now he did it with Killian. So again, I like Ryan. I do. But he set himself up for failure here because he did it again. He got penalized for something he did do incorrectly. Whether he was trying to cheat or not is irrelevant because, like, that's not our position. I don't believe he was. You know, I'd like to believe he didn't fail his drug test intentionally. I'd like to believe he didn't grab the truss intentionally. That stuff doesn't matter. Intent to us, because only he knows, intent to us can only be debated. We don't know black or white on it, so I just won't go there. But the reality is what happened, and he didn't do correct burpees. He got penalized correctly for that. As I was watching the stream and as I was there in person, I thought, those are pretty poor burpees. So anyways, afterwards, what he does is he turns around and he attacks Killian. He posts on Killian's post, unprovoked, how is it that you aren't penalized for jumping onto the rope and skipping the water? So, couple things there. His stance was that it's illegal to jump. You saw this, all right? It's illegal. The rules stated you couldn't skip the water on that obstacle, and that they went over it in the meeting specifically about that. So I'm just going to go through and rebut that point by point so that we're all on the same page here. First of all, rule book doesn't state that, but the rule book is first, and then the athlete briefing supersedes the rule book, and then the start line instructions supersede the athlete briefing, and then the official's interpretation on course supersedes it all. Correct? Like, that's the hierarchy. So in the rule book, it doesn't say that. In the briefing, they talked about you must dismount into the water, and they announced that as you ran up to the obstacle. They did it for us on the ultra. You did it for them as well.
Before we move forward, I just want to clarify a point. The official at the end being the highest in the hierarchy, if I run up to a Spartan or up to a spear throw and I clearly miss, but the volunteer says you're good and I run off, I'm good.
Well, so then there's one final authority, and that is the protest tent afterwards. So if official makes one for you, it can get overruled afterwards. And if they make a ruling against you, you can run under protest and say, I'm not doing my burpees. I stuck my spear. And they say the back end touched. You say, I'm going to run under protest. Here's my bib number. And then they take it up with the officials afterwards. So that's the final authority.
Okay.
But anyways,
I was trying to picture that extreme scenario where it's such a drastic thing that it doesn't matter if the judge
at the meeting, which I left early, so I wasn't at this part, but in talking with everyone afterwards and in talking to Robert Coble before the meeting, I got the information he was going to give to the meeting. He said, you must enter the water upon dismounting the obstacle. There was never any language about getting to the obstacle. Now, maybe someone said something that was incorrect during the meeting, or maybe they even said you must touch the water during the meeting, but that was not the pro racer briefing. That was the Spartan pro team meeting. So that information was only given out to Spartan pro team athletes. In fact, John Elbin was going to that meeting and found out at the doorway to it that this isn't the pro racer meeting. And he turned around and left because he said, why would I want to learn how to post on social media? Which made me even like him even more. But so only the Spartan pro team members were there. So what's said in there is not canon. That is not addressed to the whole field. So at the start line, I was at the start line. They did say nothing about entering the obstacles, only about exiting. So anyways, Killian was in the right. Also, a ton of the women did that and the men, and Aaron Newell, actually, the guy who was defending Ryan Woods online, did the same thing.
Teacher, just for clarity, because I haven't seen anybody ask this yet, are these briefings ever recorded at the beginning of races?
Oh, I'm sure at the start line they are. The briefing the night before does not.
No, I mean at the starting line. I've never seen footage of that anywhere other than, like
you usually can't hear it because it's just Coble at the start or Mike Morris talking to the racers. It's hard to hear.
Yeah, it seems like an important thing to be done is record that.
But anyways, Killian was correct in his ruling. And so were the other people said, yeah, a bunch of the other women did it, and was just kind of like ranted against him. And again, attacked personally, and made it nasty. So it was just, once again, he kind of dug himself into a hole where everyone wants to support Woods because he's kind of like the everyman who everyone really loves, but he takes these social media opportunities to make it personal and go above and beyond. So I feel like he set himself up for failure there.
Yeah. My social media has been basically gone for a while because just more and more, it's such a shitty platform for human beings to communicate. It's like isolating the worst of humanity. Yep. And all operating from those instances. It's all operating from the, fuck you, man, you just cut me off, just from that place of emotion that you would never probably actually say to people in real life. Like if I could just digitally grab every single person in that conversation, put them together in Tahoe, none of that would have been said. Like maybe like it would have turned into a shouting match at one point. But first of all, half of those people wouldn't have even been involved. They wouldn't have ever said any of that. And and they would have been said in such completely different ways. And if they weren't, it would have been seen as completely unacceptable. Like if anybody talked in real life the way people talk online, they'd be, what? Like, whoa, calm down. That is completely inappropriate. They'd be shunned. So I don't know. I feel like zooming out even more is that it's not so complex as just zooming out and saying, I'm not getting involved in this because of what you just said. John Alban saying, I don't need to learn how to post. Well, that's part of being a big athlete in obstacle course racing is having a social media presence. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at John Alban. He's won every title ever a million times. And I can't even tell you what his following is. I just started following him because he's not very active on there and whatever. So, I don't know. I don't know. I think the burden is on the people who are. Yeah, no, I don't agree with that.
Well, it brings me to my point. My point wasn't to call Woods out or, just not just shed light on it. My point was kind of like a call to action for OCR athletes in general, and that we are one of two sports that I'm aware of that claim to have professional athletes who also mingle with the fans and each other online in a negative way, also a positive way. But it's this and MMA. They're the only two I see where you have people online trash talking each other like on a daily basis and getting into like thread comments all the way down with random people. Everyone else at a bigger sport has people that run their social media for them, or they stay off the personal stuff. And I feel like it's time for people in our sport to finally say, like, if you are that big of a deal, if you have 20,000 followers, if you're starting to get blue check marks, if you have tens of thousands of dollars of endorsements that you do each year, it's time to take a look at what your social media is. There are, you have Facebook Messenger, you have WhatsApp, you have text messaging. You can use those channels for confronting each other. Let's keep social media to be like a pretty positive or at least appropriate representation of what our sport is. Because on our surface level, if you were new to Spartan after Tahoe and you went online after this, you saw these athletes, started following, you'd be like, this place is a cesspool. Huh. This is the worst group of people I've ever seen. Every single big name I watched on there is embroiled in some controversy, and they're all sniping at each other and random people online. And yet everyone who's involved with this community is involved because it's one of the most incredibly supportive communities we've ever seen in any sport. And the power of that is that it's every man, superstar, it doesn't matter. You're all on course. You're all in festival area afterwards. Our social media platforms would be a whole lot better and stress-free for everyone if they looked like the festival grounds, where people communicate, they have a blast, they chat with each other, and they avoid each other if they don't like each other. Like you and Isaiah, or me and Isaiah, like we've had issues this year. What happens on the festival ground? We nod, we smile, we shake hands, or we ignore each other. Mm-hmm. And yet suddenly online, all this stuff is like, fair game. I just feel like we are above this by this point. Again, we're almost a decade into the sport. The kindergarten stuff can stop. We can kind of just go on being an awesome sport and address the positives and let the people on the side take care of the negatives, because it's starting to paint us in a really bad light.
That's a really great correlation you just drew there, that anybody who wanted to get involved in this on the online community afterwards probably is like, what the shit? This is insane.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And there were so many more new eyes on it this year. Even like myself getting messages from people like, hey, so new to the sport, saw you out on course in the ultra. That was awesome. Like,
yeah,
there are so many new eyes this year because Spartan's new social media account is just so much better and their outreach is bigger. We're getting a ton of new eyes and they're not seeing an awesome product right now from us as athletes.
Well, I hope
and our sorry to cut you off, but our OCR media is also pretty like in on that. Like Matt Davis loves controversy. Yeah. He's like shit talker number one. Shit. And like I like Matt. I've slept at Matt's house, but I think he'd be the first to say like, yeah, I'm not a professional like a PR person. He's like the TMZ of OCR, and that's great. That's his shtick, right? That's his thing. That's what.
Watch out there, Brakken. I got tagged before I get onto the TMZ comment. After Spartan Worlds, the Obstacle Dominator Instagram and my personal Instagram started getting random Spartan followers almost the same way that I do when I'm on like a new TV show. I was like, what's happening? Or like when Hunter tagged me in one of his posts, I started getting followers. And it's like, what happened? And realizing we're Obstacle Dominator, we're Benny Gifford and Brakken Crocker. And so people are starting to get more interested in because of these big events. And so I'm happy that they're finding outlets like this, you know, instead of maybe going to look at Killian's post where Woods went off on him and stuff like that. But as far as the TMZ comment, Cody Thrift sent me, I don't know, one of the recent episodes from Obstacle Racing Media and was like, oh, talking shit about Obstacle Dominator. And they weren't, but they said something. They were apologizing to you for something. I couldn't even understand what they were talking about, but I think they combated the fact that we referred to them as the TMZ, or somebody, I think it was us, referred to them as the TM, just in passing like that, the TMZ of OCR media. And I was like,
they are.
That's 100% what it is.
I'm not saying 2006 TMZ. I'm saying 2019 TMZ. 2006 TMZ was tabloid. 2019 TMZ is, we used to be a tabloid. Now we do real news, but we tinge it with some dirt and some humor. Like that's Matt Davis. He does his job, but he tinges it with some dirt and some humor, right? I'd say it's a compliment, and it's recognizing his role and his contribution. 2005, 2006 TMZ, that would be an insult.
Yeah. And in response, I love the fact that you know the difference between those two. I have no freaking, I think I've seen that's.
Well, I grew up with no cable.
That's
all right. So one of the shows that was on late at night was TMZ when I was in high school. And sometimes I would just see it and it was a train wreck. It was so trashy. And now they like do real reporting and they're like quoted by like real news. Like, and according to TMZ, I'm like, wow, CNN just said according to TMZ. That's crazy.
That's that's the show with the two guys who stand there and there's a bunch of like cubicles and like random things behind them.
Yeah. So Matt Davis and who else did you say was upset about it?
I don't remember.
You said someone sent a message or something?
Oh, Cody Thrift. He wasn't upset about it. He was just like, oh, shit, look out.
Yeah, so Matt Davis, if you're listening, I see it as a compliment. You're not early 2000s TMZ. You're late 20-teens TMZ. That's a step forward.
Maybe we should address this point too. I haven't listened to this in a few weeks and it was in passing while I listened to it. So I might be off on what spurred this type of thinking anyways. But the impression I got was that in response to that, they were saying, yeah, like we appeal to the people who are actually making the sport happen, which is the masses. And I was like, and he was talking about, you know, we're not trying to go after some like one slice percent or whatever, you know, saying that we are. And I was like,
that's fine.
You damn straight we're going for the 1%. That because
know your role.
Yeah. Brakken and I, neither of us are anything other than part of the 1% of OCR that are taking that approach. And we want to have discussions about in-depth training tactics and things like that.
We'd love to have the greater community entertained by what we say, but like, we're racers. We have a racing perspective. So embrace your role.
To be honest, if you listen to, I always think about Joe Rogan when I think about great podcasting. And obviously we can't match him in every regard because he's very different. But listen to any one of his stuff. That's not widely appealing. It's ridiculously hyper scientific, specific things and very charged.
Yeah.
Like
Every guest is a niche expert.
Yeah. And yet it's huge. So, I mean, I don't really, it's not that I don't care about the masses, but this episode has actually been a little bit on the fringe of my interest of what I want to talk about, because it's like, yeah, what drama happened last week in your world? But I am really excited, dude. Like, I didn't realize that I had this background little dude rooting for Robert Killian. I think it's because our interview, which I slipped up and I didn't even post. I mean, obviously it was released, but I didn't do the social media post saying, hey, we interviewed Robert Killian. And the title of it, it came out like 2 days before Tahoe. The title of it was, which I thought twice about doing this, but it was Robert Killian, Spartan world champion, with a question mark at the end. And I think ever since then, at that conversation, I was just I didn't realize I was rooting for him to finally have a year where he could repeat his win. And so when I was watching the live coverage, I was like, I mean, obviously soul crushed for everyone else that they all just missed their spirits. But when I saw him take off, I was like, oh my God, run.
It was crazy that he predicted. What did I say? If you win, where did it happen? And he described it. Yeah. He said, I know my gear. I know exactly what I need to wear. I'm more prepared for that situation than anyone else is. And I know that other people will make the wrong choice and they're going to crumble because of the cold, and people are going to miss spears, and I'm going to take advantage of everything. And as soon as I watched him run away from the spear and I watched misses, I was like, oh my good, this is like his scenario for how it happens just came true. And now he just has to capitalize. And he did. Yeah. It is really easy to take your foot off the pedal and coast when you're hurting and in the lead. And he did everything correctly to get through that finish line in first place.
And, he never looked like he was going to fall apart either. Like, obviously he was pushing, but he never looked like he was at his wit's end with anything.
He rode the edge. His hands looked cold the whole time, but still functional. Yeah. Like, his stride looked strong, but tired. Like, he was descending hard and he was climbing hard. He looked fatigued, but like, he still was saving that one little bit left just in case. And people made a big deal that Atkins and Albin ran him down, which they should. They had a superhuman performance to do so. But he had kept one little bit there. I am fully certain that if there was one more climb and they were only 30 seconds down and people are like, oh man, this is it, he would have accelerated up that, because he made sure that the things he had done in the past and blown up, he wasn't going to do again.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like he'd done at that level, when you have so many other people who are as fine-tuned as you, if not a little bit more, I think it takes a few races. The fact that Albin's done what he's done is unreal with the OCR Worlds. Well, no, I think it's showing an example of the field is not as deep as what shows up there, because there will be room for him to make mistakes like that double sandbag and still win. Whereas at Spartan Worlds, everyone has been there for so many years and either won or been like first through fourth, that every year there's less and less that is going to mess with them, because they've been there, they've done it, and they've perfected it. And it looks like people always say stuff like that, and I'm aware of it, and it's cool to think about stuff like this, the athletic ability of, oh, you know what, he ended up getting second or third, but he was running him down so hard, and that's so impressive, that blah, blah, blah. The point is, obstacle course racing is who can get from point A to point B and do everything in here, all the millions of variables without screwing up, is going to win. And that has happened to me so many times where I belittle like my own wins, because I'm like, yeah, but he did burpees and he ended up like 2 seconds behind me. But it's like, no, you won because you won because you won. That's it.
Yeah. There's this book. It's called Once a Runner. And it's mandatory reading for every runner out there. But there's this concept in there that I really love. And they say a runner is the ultimate miser, just hoarding his pennies. He just does not. And that's your energy. And like they do not want to spend on anything. And they want to spend the least amount necessary to get the most in return at every turn of the race. And the goal is to run out of money when you no longer need it. And that's exactly what you do. You want to run out of money when you no longer need it and you cross the finish line. And Killian did that perfectly. He might have had a little bit of money left, but he ensured that he didn't get out of that swim and then just spend all his money trying to blow the race apart. And he also ensured that he didn't keep it all and suddenly make a mistake and not have time to spend it. He spent his money perfectly throughout that course so that by the time he was running low on money, he didn't need any anymore.
Yeah. Speaking of somebody who spent their money really well, Nicole pops into my head on Ape Hanger. Was she doing what Aaron did? Was she one arm swinging through that thing?
Yeah.
That girl confuses the crap out of me at the North American Championships on Gibbons, which is tricky, but it's literally a perfect grip. You know, she was chicken winging through the entire thing. And I was like, what? You're a rock climber and you're the best rock climber in our sport. And it's literally a perfect circle grip. Like worst case, you miss. And now you're hanging from a perfect grip with one arm for half a second. And yet she can go through something soaking wet at altitude at the top of the mountain while she's freezing and just no problem do big drastic swings on a bouncing grip that's metal. And those things looked like they're pretty slick, like not good to hold on to, right?
Yeah. They give a little bit, which is tricky, but my take on that is twofold. The first is that the chicken wing thing, and I think Lindsay or someone else did it too. Atkins, maybe? I don't know.
Did it too.
It's smart. If you don't have to use your hands at OCR World Championship, you don't use your hands, because Spartan, you can attack every grip obstacle at Spartan because there's so much time in between. OCR Worlds, if you cross that line one time with your grip, you now hit a gauntlet of obstacles. The whole thing is a gauntlet essentially, and now you're in trouble. And so kind of like back to spending the money thing, if you don't have to spend it, especially at an obstacle dense course, you don't spend it. I mean, that's millionaires become billionaires by not spending money, right?
Right.
And that's her. She has the best grip, and she ensures that she has the best grip by not spending it if she doesn't have to.
Yeah.
And she wasn't caught in a battle there, was she?
No. Those two, are you talking about at NORAM or?
Yeah. They were pretty free and clear of the rest of the pack. And they basically know, like, if I don't fail anything, I'm good.
Yes, but she did know that a one of the climbs that was in the 3K was coming up immediately after that, and Lindsay was, I don't know about right behind her, but she was pretty close behind her.
Yeah.
To me, they seem like similar situations with completely different panouts. This is a 3K that's going to be over in 20 minutes with no obstacles that she's going to be worried about failing, with no bad weather, nothing like that, with needing to shave as much time off as possible on the arguably better climber than her. And then in OCR Worlds, she's doing massive swings on a Spartan obstacle. It's like, just, there's no need to I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, the risk reward is interesting there, because the Spartan obstacle, it gives that one, that caving ladder, it gives every time you pull on it. And so when you're here, it's sapping you, and it's taking more energy to go 90 than it would on a monkey bar. But also it's really, really cold. And the longer you stay on there, the more it's trashing you. Where swinging on that one is sometimes a little easier than swinging on a monkey bar if your hands are fine and you get off it in a third of the time. So your hands aren't as numb. You've used less energy. We're in the 3K, like, what's the risk reward? I can get through this 8 seconds faster, but if 5 obstacles later, I have to redo one, I've lost all of that. Yeah. And now if I have to redo that one twice, now, like, it just wasn't even worth it to begin with.
Right.
So she actually saved energy by swinging. She didn't cost herself energy there.
Right.
And that's one of those, you grab onto that one. And I did that one, I've done it probably 5 times now in Tahoe. The second you grab the first one and transition to the second, you either know I can swing this one or I can't, because they're metal and they're not rotating. And so as soon as you feel how much give it has and you feel how wet it is, your hands just right away know. In 2 years there, I swung right through, and 2 years I stayed because they were dry and it was fine, and I just swung through.
You know what's scary though? I've seen too many videos. This plays against me, actually. It never comes up during a race, but I've seen too many videos. I can picture it happening to Amelia Boone and Rose Wetzel, where they're going across a ring or a really prime monkey bar, and they're doing fine. And then you look at their face and they're 100% focused on the next thing. And then suddenly their hand just lets go. And they are like, what the shit just happened? And so it's always in my mind, like, it's never happened to me, but I'm so scared of one of those instances of just dropping and being like, what? Are you kidding me?
You have to be so sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the tricky part. All right, so Albin just won the 3K. Who's your pick for the 15K? Oh, did you see our buddy Thomas took second?
Yeah, freaking crazy. I didn't see the time. How close was he?
He was like 39 seconds behind, I think.
My
And then
God.
Sergey was only like 6 seconds behind him. He's the
Wow.
guy I've raced in Dubai twice. He got beaten
Well,
by twice.
I can never bet against Albin, but I could see Sergey beating him tomorrow because last
way.
year, the time gap was even smaller on the 15K than it was on the 3K, which makes even less sense to me. But
And I just see the place to get Albin is the 3K because if he can make one mistake, and Sergey can redline, and his obstacles are so fast. I don't know if you've watched it. The the Spartan Euro Championship from this year.
yes.
Do you see Sergey's rig at the end?
Yeah, that was so cool.
He can do that as well as anyone. Like he's Aaron Newell-ish in how fast he can get through obstacles. And so like the 3K that's his chance. Over 15K, he's phenomenal. I've raced him in a beast. He's phenomenal, but no one can climb and descend with John, especially not at altitude for 15K.
Well, but it's a flat course and it's not at altitude, and I'm operating.
I thought they were rolling hills.
Yeah, no.
Not enough. Oh, that's right. Last year he had a hard time separating.
Yeah, not at all. I mean,
Okay.
there is some incline, but you would not call that a hilly course.
Gotcha.
And also, I'm just operating off the data from last year where Albin had a bigger gap than he did on the 15K. 15K, everyone was right on his ass right up until the end. So
That's true.
I don't know exactly why, but maybe these guys are at their absolute finality better or creeping up on better flat runners than Albin is. And Albin is predominantly more of a mountain runner, even though obviously he's an incredible flat runner.
Yeah. People
so,
forget how fast he truly is.
Yeah. Like he could probably just get on the track at any point, run what, like 4:15?
I don't know if he could run that fast, but his 5K through marathon is just that ability. I think people forget he ran a couple years back. He jumped in his hometown area. They have a marathon, a road marathon, and he ran 224, 226 in a marathon with no road training. He threw on a pair of racing flats and jumped out there and did it. And it had something like 1,000 feet of gain on the course. So it was not a flat course. And he negative split, I think, a 224 or 226. That's only 6 minutes off the U.S. Olympic trial standard.
Wow.
With only mountain training to prep for it. So his engine's just so big that people forget how fast it also is.
Ooh, speaking of just off of qualifying, not Olympics or anything, but did I talk about this? No, whatever. I'm just excited. At the end of a mile repeats workout that you had programmed, it was you do mile repeats and then you do, I think it was 400 repeats at high.
You had some 200s.
And then 200s at like all out. Well, at the end of that, I'm effing dead and it's hot as balls. But you can do 200 meters all out even when you're dead. And I ran, oh shit, I can't remember the exact times. I think it was 3 200s, and I did a 29 and then a 27 and a 26. And that was at the end. I've never trained sprinting. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I sure as hell am not fast off of the line, especially at the end of a workout. So I kind of want to see with good weather without.
I thought you said you ran 24 the other day.
Maybe it was 24. I can't remember what the numbers were, but I remember looking at.
I remember it was much faster than 20. I mean, 26 is quick at the end of a workout, but you ran faster than that.
All right, so I think it was 24. Then I'd have to check my Strava and what I recorded for the workout. But I remember then looking it up later and be like, "What? That's like 2 or 3 seconds off of like Division 1." And that was at the end of a workout. So then again, I don't know how much of a difference 1 or 2 seconds is on a 200 meter.
Massive.
Again, I've never done it, so I don't know. But
shorter the race, the more massive it is. But
yeah,
still, you ran 24 seconds at the end of a workout. That's fast.
Yeah, where I was freaking dead. So I'm pretty excited about that. Anyways, that's all.
So I want to close out today with a public service announcement. And it's brought to you by Spartan Worlds and OCR World Championship. And that is, at the end of the day, our sport comes down to 3 things. Your running ability, most often up and down hills or mountains, your fatigued grip strength and endurance, and your ability to run through terrible conditions. That means terrain and weather. So Tahoe ripped the field apart. OCR Worlds today just showed, because it was rainy and muddy. If you cannot do it outside of a vacuum, you can't do it at all. If you can only do it in pristine conditions, don't bother doing it. You have to get out in the mud. You have to get off road on rocky, rooty trails. You have to do your grip work when you're tired, and you have to be able to run up and down mountains when you're tired. That's it. All the other stuff is great, but if you can't do it in bad conditions, the sport is going to expose you. And we saw it in both championships so far. I can't wait to see the recaps of, did you watch the live stream for the 3K?
No. Mm-mm.
It's just muddy. It's wet. It was muddy. It was raining in the morning. And instantly a bunch of people realized my day's done because there's grip. And then there's the grip necessary to get through an OCR Worlds 3K when it's wet. And it's just a different type of thing. And there is running, and then there's running when it's 18 degrees out and the footing is icy. You got to be able to do it in the worst possible conditions. So the next time it's running, you're like, I can't tell you how many times I get this message. I can't do the workout today, coach. It's storming outside. Or we're supposed to get a snowstorm tomorrow, so I'm not going to do my long run. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? The OCR gods just blessed you with a training tool.
Yeah.
Like, do you know how many times people live in Texas and say, man, I just can't train in cold. How am I ever going to race in Tahoe? We're sitting here in the Midwest and you're going to avoid a Tahoe condition? You just can't do that. When you get bad weather, you shuffle your week to do your quality day on that day.
Yeah.
When your trails get washed out and muddy, unless you're in the type of place where they want to protect the trails and not erode them, that's the day you shuffle your week to get your intervals done, because anyone can run flat ground intervals. It's hard to run them through soupy trails. So that's my public service announcement. Use the bad weather, don't avoid it. Use the bad terrain, don't avoid it.
That is very timely for anybody here. I mean, I know in Colorado Springs, there was a 60-degree swing in temperature yesterday.
Yeah.
So I just know about here, the shit hasn't hit the fan, but it's switched to winter very quickly. It went from 90-something degrees to in the 40s with very harsh winds and raining. So I'm just waiting for my stinking calves to allow me to run a little bit more. I think I'm going to try running again later today, just so exactly what you're talking about is there, because I want to stop. Literally the only reason that I never go to Tahoe, well, not the only reason, but the main reason is it's cold. It looks miserable. Like, doesn't look like
Alex Walker. That's all you got to look at, right?
Dude, yeah, freaking fifth.
She might have had the race of the weekend in terms of placing better than she was predicted to, and she's from a hot state.
Her and Aaron. Well, Aaron was already. Man, no, that was.
Aaron was his best result ever, but he was, I would consider, a dark horse to podium.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
She was not a dark horse to go top 5. She was not on the radar to go top 5.
Oh, okay. I was like, yeah, she
was a dark horse top 10 maybe, and she just knocked it out of the park. But I'll tell you this, Alex, here's your shout out. Brian Gawiski and Alex, and then is it her boyfriend?
Who?
Husband? Some guy she was with that weekend. They came to our hotel room in the morning because we were like 50 meters from the start line, and they had a 2-hour delay on the starts because of the icy conditions. They couldn't get people to the top of the mountain for like officials and volunteers and stuff. Anyways, they came and they hung out in the room for a bit, and she was so locked in and positive. Like right from the start, a guy I was staying with, Bobby and I were talking like, this girl's locked in. We went back and forth talking about it. She's like, what would you do here based off yesterday? And I told her, and she's like, yep, this is what I'm going to do here. Or she'd disagree and say it. But everything she said with conviction. She had her plan for her gear, for her hands, for everything. And she talked about, and this is going to happen to girls, and I'm not going to let that happen. And she was just so locked in. And she's a Texas girl, right?
Yeah.
She's a Texas girl. She has no right doing well in the mountains, at altitude, or in snow. And yet she was so locked in that you could tell she was going to take care of business. And she did. We kept getting.
We just lost your audio for the last like 5 seconds. I don't know what happened. But to keep talking about Alex, that was ridiculously inspiring, because that's always my main internal fear and excuse. The second I hit in any kind of incline in a race, I'm like, shit. I just think, crap, this is where I start losing. This is where this and that. And then, yeah, Flatland Texas girl comes to Spartan Worlds and gets 5th. So good job, freaking Alex. Nope, Brakken, still can't hear you. Well, I mean, I guess good timing right here at the end. So I got the go-ahead from Brakken. We're going to sign off here. Convenient timing for technological issues. Brakken wishes you well. He is using CBD extensively, no matter what he does on the other side of the screen right now. He wants me to tell you that. And thank you guys for tuning in. We're probably going to have Alex on next. I don't know why I do this because we almost never do what we say we're going to do at the end of the episode. But we'll probably have Alex on, or maybe Atkins if he'll stop no call, no showing to our podcast appointments. Yeah, so that's it, guys. And peace. Brakken says bye. Brakken wave. Sad face.
Visit ObstacleDominator.com for show notes, training, and racing resources, and leave your question for Benny and Brakken.